What if negotiation was not about defeating someone, but about making them want to move with you? Every day, you negotiate more than you realize. A price, an idea, a favor, an opportunity, even a simple decision. And the truth is simple. People rarely say yes only because your argument is logical. They say yes when they feel understood, respected, and safe. In this video, you will discover how ethical persuasion uses psychology to create agreement without manipulation or pressure. Number 1. Ethical persuasion begins with empathy. Most people enter a negotiation thinking, how can I get what I want? But the most effective negotiators begin with a better question. What does the other person truly need? This small shift changes everything. When you understand the other person's fears, goals, pressure points, and hidden motivations, you stop pushing blindly and start guiding the conversation intelligently. Empathy is not weakness. It is strategy with humanity. Imagine two people negotiating a deal. One side keeps repeating the same demand, trying to win by force. The other side asks, what would make this agreement feel fair to you? Suddenly, the conversation changes. The other person feels seen. Their defenses lower. They become more willing to listen. This happens because people are more open to influence when they feel understood. When someone senses that you are not trying to exploit them, they become less resistant. In psychology, resistance often appears when people feel controlled. But when they feel respected, they become more flexible. Ethical persuasion uses empathy as a bridge. You are not pretending to care. You are actually trying to understand. You listen to tone, hesitation, body language, and the words people repeat. If someone keeps talking about risk, they may not need a cheaper price. They may need security. If someone keeps mentioning time, they may not need more features. They may need simplicity. If someone says, I need to think about it, they may not be rejecting the idea. They may be asking for emotional safety. And before we continue, if this first point already made you see negotiation differently, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because the next principles will show you how people are influenced in ways most never notice. Number 2, reciprocity makes people more willing to cooperate. One of the strongest forces in human behavior is the desire to return a favor. When someone gives us something valuable, we often feel an internal pressure to give something back. This is reciprocity. But in ethical persuasion, reciprocity is not about trapping people. It is about creating genuine value before asking for something. For example, in a negotiation, you might offer useful information, flexibility, a small concession, a helpful suggestion, or a clear explanation that makes the other person's decision easier. When you give first in a sincere way, you create a cooperative atmosphere. But there is a difference between ethical reciprocity and manipulation. Manipulation says, I gave you something, so now you owe me. Ethical reciprocity says, I want to create value, and if this helps us move forward together, great. The intention matters. Think about everyday life. When someone helps you without making you feel pressured, you naturally feel more positive toward them. You trust them more. You listen more carefully. In negotiation, the same principle works. A small gesture of goodwill can soften the entire conversation. But the key is this. What you give must be meaningful to the other person, not just convenient for you. Giving a discount when the real concern is trust may not help. Giving more time when the real concern is urgency may not help. Reciprocity works best when your offer touches the real need behind the negotiation. Number 3, people do not buy arguments. They buy clarity. A confused mind usually says no. This is one of the simplest and most powerful truths in persuasion. You can have the best offer, the best idea, or the best solution, but if the other person cannot understand it quickly, they may reject it simply because it feels complicated. Clarity reduces mental effort, and the brain loves saving energy. When you explain something in a simple, organized, and calm way, people feel safer. They can follow your reasoning. They can imagine the result. They can see the next step. Many negotiations fail because people overwhelm the other side with too much information. They try to prove value by saying everything at once. But persuasion does not come from saying more. It comes from saying the right thing in the right order. A strong negotiator knows how to simplify. First, explain the problem. Then explain the consequence of doing nothing. Then explain the solution. Then explain why it is fair. Then explain the next step. This structure helps the other person move mentally from confusion to confidence. For example, instead of saying, "This option includes several advantages, long-term benefits, strategic improvements, and operational value," you could say, "This helps you save time, reduce risk, and make the decision easier." That is clearer. That is easier to remember. That is more persuasive. Clarity also builds trust. When someone explains things simply, we often feel they understand the subject deeply. When someone hides behind complicated language, we may suspect they are trying to confuse us. In ethical persuasion, your goal is not to pressure people into agreement. Your goal is to make the truth easier to see. Number 4, the best negotiators ask better questions. Many people think persuasion is about speaking well, but often persuasion begins with asking well. A good question can reveal more than a long argument. It can uncover hidden objections, real motivations, emotional barriers, and opportunities for agreement. Instead of asking, "Do you agree?" ask, "What part of this feels difficult for you?" Instead of asking, "Can we close this today?" ask, "What would you need to feel comfortable moving forward?" Instead of asking, "Is the price okay?" ask, "How are you thinking about value versus cost?" These questions do something powerful. They invite the other person to participate in the solution. When people help build the answer, they are more likely to accept it. This is called ownership. People defend ideas they feel they helped create. Questions also reduce conflict. If someone disagrees with you, pushing back immediately may create resistance. But asking, "What makes you see it that way?" turns confrontation into curiosity. The person feels heard, and you gain information. There is another secret. Questions slow down emotional reactions. When a conversation becomes tense, a thoughtful question can interrupt defensiveness. It gives the other person a moment to think instead of react. But the tone matters. A question can feel respectful or aggressive depending on how you ask it. "Why would you think that?" can sound like an attack. "Help me understand how you're seeing this," sounds like an invitation. Same purpose, completely different emotional effect. Ethical persuasion is not about cornering people with clever questions. It is about using questions to understand reality more accurately. Number 5, scarcity increases attention, but must be honest. Scarcity is powerful because people value what feels limited. Limited time, limited availability, limited opportunity, limited access. When something may not be available forever, the brain pays attention. This does not mean scarcity should be used dishonestly. Fake urgency destroys trust. Ethical scarcity is simple. Tell the truth about real limits. If a price is only available until a certain date, say so. If your time is limited, say so. If there are only a few spots, say so. If waiting could create a real disadvantage, explain it clearly. The reason scarcity works is connected to loss aversion. Human beings often feel the pain of losing something more strongly than the pleasure of gaining something. So when people realize they might miss an opportunity, they evaluate it more seriously. But there is a danger. If you use false scarcity, people may feel manipulated. And once trust is broken, persuasion becomes much harder. A person may agree once under pressure, but they may never want to deal with you again. A better approach is to combine scarcity with respect. You might say, "I want to be transparent. This option is available until Friday, but I do not want you to feel rushed. I just want you to have the information before the opportunity changes." That feels different from, "You must decide right now or lose everything." Ethical scarcity does not force a decision. It helps people understand the real consequences of delay. Number 6, social proof influences decisions more than people admit. People like to believe they make decisions independently. But in reality, we are deeply influenced by what others do. When we see that other people trust something, choose something, recommend something, or benefit from something, we feel safer considering it too. This is social proof. It appears everywhere. Reviews, testimonials, case studies, popularity, word of mouth, expert recommendations, and even simple phrases like, "Many people choose this option because." In negotiation, social proof reduces uncertainty. If someone is unsure whether to trust your idea, showing that similar people have succeeded with it can make the decision feel less risky. For example, a company with a similar challenge used this approach and reduced delays is more persuasive than simply saying, "This is a good idea." But again, ethics matter. Social proof must be real. Do not invent numbers. Do not exaggerate results. Do not create fake authority. Ethical persuasion uses proof to inform, not deceive. The strongest social proof is specific. Instead of saying, "Everyone loves this," say, "3 clients in your situation chose this because they wanted a simpler process." Specific proof feels more believable because it gives context. Social proof also works because humans are social learners. For thousands of years, watching the group helped us survive. If others avoided something, it might be dangerous. If others trusted something, it might be safe. That ancient instinct still shapes modern decisions. So when you negotiate, do not only explain why your offer makes sense. Show where it has worked, who it has helped, and why similar people found it valuable. Number 7, framing changes how people perceive value. The way you present an idea can change how people feel about it. This is framing. The same information can sound attractive or unattractive depending on the angle. For example, "This costs $100 per month" feels different from "This costs about $3 per day." Same price, different frame. "You will have to wait 2 weeks" feels different from "We can have this ready in just 2 weeks." Same timeline, different emotional reaction. Framing does not mean lying. It means choosing the most useful and honest perspective. In ethical persuasion, framing helps people understand value more clearly. A common mistake in negotiation is focusing only on cost. But people rarely care about cost alone. They care about what the cost means. Does it save time? Reduce stress? Avoid risk? Create opportunity? Improve status? Bring peace of mind? If you frame your offer only as a price, people compare it to money. If you frame it as a solution, people compare it to the problem it solves. That is a huge difference. For example, instead of saying, "This service is more expensive," you could say, "This option costs more upfront, but it reduces the chance of delays, mistakes, and extra expenses later." Now, the person is not just thinking about price. They are thinking about protection. Framing is also important when discussing concessions. If you give something away too quickly, it may lose value. But if you frame it properly, the other person understands its importance. "I can adjust this part because building a long-term relationship matters to me" sounds much stronger than "Fine, I'll lower it." Number 8, silence can be more persuasive than pressure. Many people fear silence in negotiation. They talk too much because silence feels uncomfortable. But skilled negotiators understand that silence can be powerful. After you ask an important question or make an offer, silence gives the other person space to think. Pressure often creates resistance. Silence creates reflection. When you rush to fill every pause, you may weaken your position. You may explain too much, discount too quickly, or appear insecure. Imagine you present a fair offer and the other person stays quiet. Many people panic and immediately say, "But we can lower the price," or "We can change the terms," or "Maybe this is too much." They negotiate against themselves before the other person even responds. Silence teaches patience. It shows confidence. It communicates that you are comfortable with what you presented. But silence should not be cold or hostile. It should be calm, respectful, and open. There is also emotional intelligence in knowing when to stop talking. Sometimes the other person needs a moment to process. Sometimes they are calculating. Sometimes they're deciding whether they trust you. If you interrupt that process, you may disturb the decision before it forms. A good negotiator says what needs to be said, then allows space. This is difficult because most people use talking to manage their own anxiety. But negotiation is not about relieving your discomfort. It is about helping the conversation reach a clear and fair outcome. Number 9, trust is the real currency of persuasion. You can win an argument and lose the relationship. You can close a deal and destroy future opportunities. You can pressure someone into saying yes and make them regret it later. That is why trust matters more than clever tactics. Trust is built through consistency, honesty, listening, and respect. People ask themselves silent questions during negotiation. Can I believe this person? Are they hiding something? Do they care only about themselves? Will I regret agreeing? If the answer feels unsafe, persuasion becomes difficult. Even a great offer can fail when trust is missing. But when trust is present, people become more open, more patient, and more willing to collaborate. One powerful way to build trust is to acknowledge downsides honestly. For example, saying, "This option is not the cheapest, and it may not be the best fit if your only priority is short-term cost," can actually increase credibility. Why? Because people trust you more when you do not pretend everything is perfect. Another way is to avoid overpromising. Many people exaggerate to win the moment, but exaggeration creates problems later. Ethical persuasion protects your reputation. It understands that the best negotiation is not the one where someone says yes once. It is the one where they feel good enough to come back. Trust also grows when people feel they can say no safely. Strange as it sounds, giving someone freedom makes them less defensive. When you say, "This may or may not be the right fit, but let's look at it honestly," the person feels less trapped. And because they feel less trapped, they may listen more openly. Number 10. The goal is not control. The goal is alignment. The deepest level of negotiation is not getting someone to surrender. It is creating alignment. Alignment means both sides understand the goal, the value, the trade-offs, and the reason for moving forward. When there is alignment, the agreement feels natural. It does not feel forced. Both people can say, "This makes sense." That is the difference between manipulation and ethical persuasion. Manipulation hides the truth to get compliance. Ethical persuasion reveals the truth in a way that helps people make a better decision. Alignment begins when you stop seeing the other person as an obstacle. They are not just someone to convince. They are someone with fears, incentives, pressures, and needs. Your job is to find where your interests overlap. Sometimes that means making a deal. Sometimes it means walking away respectfully. And this is one of the most overlooked signs of ethical persuasion. You are willing to accept that not every negotiation should end in agreement. If the solution is not right, forcing it may create regret. But if the solution is right, your role is to make it clear, valuable, and emotionally safe. A powerful negotiator can say, "Here is what I can offer. Here is why I believe it works. Here are the limits. Here is what you gain. Here is what you should consider. And if it makes sense, we can move forward." That kind of communication feels calm, confident, and trustworthy. In the end, negotiation is not just about money, contracts, opportunities, or decisions. It is about human behavior. Every conversation carries invisible questions. Do you understand me? Can I trust you? Is this fair? Am I safe saying yes? Am I safe saying no? When you learn the psychology behind negotiation, you stop relying on pressure. You start using empathy, clarity, reciprocity, honest scarcity, social proof, framing, silence, and trust. Not to manipulate people, but to communicate in a way that respects how the human mind actually works. And maybe the biggest lesson is this: persuasion becomes more powerful when it becomes more ethical. Because when people feel respected, they do not just agree. They remember how you made them feel. So the next time you negotiate, do not ask only, "How can I win?" Ask, "How can we reach an agreement that both sides can respect?" If this video helped you see persuasion in a different way, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to negotiate better without losing their values. And now I want to know, which of these principles do you think is the most powerful in real life? Empathy, reciprocity, scarcity, trust, or silence? Write your answer in the comments.